President Obama delivered his seventh State of the Union address last night. He proposed ideas to strengthen the middle class and vowed to veto any bills from Republicans that tried to chip away at Obamacare and financial regulation, among other issues. Here with analysis of the speech is Ronald Orol, a senior editor at The Deal, joining us from our D.C. bureau. And Ronald, let's talk first about financial regulation. Republicans control both the House and the Senate. Can the president use his executive power to impose more regulation and taxes?
Well, he didn't talk at all really about executive action last night, so I don't expect he'll try to do those kind of things related to taxes. He did have some interesting proposals that were released over the weekend that would raise taxes, for example, on bank leverage and on capital gains. And we expect to see those in a couple of weeks in the Obama's budget that comes out. But he didn't really talk about that too much. He definitely did send a veto threat to Wall Street rules. That was kind of code for the Dodd-Frank Act written in the wake of the financial crisis. And he's already actually issued a veto threat for a House bill that included some Dodd-Frank relief provisions for big banks related to the Volcker rule. So it'll be interesting to see if he can succeed at that veto in the future, particularly if Republicans are able to get a significant portion of Democrats on board. One of the most difficult things will be when there is motions to roll back Wall Street rules attached to must-pass spending bills. And so that's going to be much more difficult for Obama to veto. He won't be able to veto that. So if the Republicans now that control both houses are able to attach some Dodd-Frank related provisions to the a must-pass spending bill,
right,
then it's going to be something that Obama will have to agree with.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, do you think the Republicans can overcome that veto threat to roll back parts of Dodd-Frank or other reforms?
It's interesting. He definitely will need, the Republicans will need, let's say, a third of Democrats in the Senate, for example, to support some of their bills. And it's in the House, they've been receiving a substantial number of Democrats supporting bills to roll back parts of Dodd-Frank, part of the bank reform. But it's interesting, after the change in hands in Congress, we saw a diminished amount of Democrat support. Still, let's say 50 Democrats back in the House. In the Senate, it's hard to say. It's the Republicans have just taken over control. Senator Richard Shelby has taken over the banking committee. It's not clear exactly what their agenda is. There isn't a lot of co-sponsor bills yet. And Republicans are running around looking for Democrat co-sponsors for their Dodd-Frank rollback bills. So I suspect that there will be some Democrats in the Senate that will want to roll back parts of Dodd-Frank. And it'll be, if depending on how much they get, that's going to be a deciding factor on whether Obama can roll back, can be successful at vetoing a bill or not.
Now, last night, the president spoke about the importance of providing free community college for 2 years, but ultimately someone has to pay for it. Does this mean more taxes? Can you explain?
Yeah, well, that proposal, like a bunch of his other proposals, raising minimum wage, a $3,000 tax credit for daycare per child, a 7-day sick leave requirement, they don't really have much chance of passage. But assuming the provision on free college does somehow pass through Congress, there's definitely going to have to be some tax increases to offset those costs. So we'll definitely, Obama has a bunch of proposals, and those appear dead in the water too. Like I mentioned, the bank tax on leverage he introduced over the weekend, or the White House introduced over the weekend. He didn't even include that in his speech, but expect to see that being discussed in Obama's budget in a couple of weeks. And so he does have proposals that would raise
right,
taxes to offset the cost of free college, but a lot of those would affect, for example, hedge fund managers and private equity fund managers,
right,
through increased capital gains taxes.
All right, Ronald, we'll leave it there. Ronald Orol, senior editor at The Deal, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm Scott Gamm, and you're watching The Street.